Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 124. I'm Enigmus and today we're diving in with the most challenging part of this build, the front section of the Broadsword. This is where we've got round intersecting with round on top of round, around round. It's just all round. We have to try and make it work with blocks that aren't round, and that's the challenge. It's not a bad thing. It can be a little bit disheartening if a person is very new to this sort of thing. I found when I started working in voxel sort of scenarios that anything round was very, very daunting. Anything that I wanted to do that was supposed to come out a roundish, like an ellipse or a circle or whatever, I was very quick and very happy to use some of the online tools, plots.co.uk being the one that I talk about the most, as an aid to basically tell me exactly where to put the things in order to make the things look like what I wanted. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great way to start, and if a person never moves beyond using those tools, it's still a wonderful way to get things done. Now I find myself in a position where if I want things to be round, quite often I've done it so many times I can just do it from memory. I don't want to say entirely freehand because it's not always the case, but you've seen me do ellipses and things of that nature without referencing any kind of tools, and it's not because of any particular gift on my part. It's just familiarity. That's the first layer of the challenge, is doing the profiles, getting the profiles the way that we want them to look. And then the second part is joining all of those different profiles together, and that's why we originally, for this build, before we started joining things together, we did all of those layered profiles so that we had a visual aid at every stage of the filling in process that would allow us to kind of gauge what direction we're going and how we want to get there in the various different axes moving along. The whole idea here is that we want to take all of these intersecting round things and assemble them in a shape that closely resembles the combination of those profiles as we can, with the understanding, and I'm always trying to point this out just so that people maybe new to the series who haven't heard me say it the billion times in the past that I have, it's not going to be perfect. It's numerically impossible to have perfectly intersecting shapes of this nature when we're talking about round things in a square universe. So we just do the best that we can with what we've got, and that means that there's going to be little faces that are going to be exposed. There are going to be intersections that don't necessarily make the most sense, and there are going to be outcomes that we're not at all happy with. So when I'm doing this particular stage of a build, whether I've done all of the layered profiles or not, the goal is just to get something in place around the entire shape that we're working with. And then once it's there, I'll usually go over it several different times throughout the process of the remainder of the build and make changes as different ideas come to me. And eventually I'll reach a point where I'm happy with the outcome and it becomes a part of the finished build. This particular set of shapes, it's large enough on this vessel based on the block size relative to the amount of space that we're using, so that we do have the opportunity to smooth some things off where previously it might have been a little bit more difficult if we had used a much smaller shape. It's a good idea whenever we're doing things to give ourselves room to make the shapes that we want. If we can't give ourselves room, then we have to accept that sometimes things are going to be much more difficult to pull off, and possibly be even impossible to pull off based on just the geometry of the whole situation. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I realized that as soon as I stopped expecting myself to make perfect shapes like this, I started enjoying it a lot more, and I started appreciating the final result of whatever it was I was trying to build a lot more, because I wasn't constantly criticizing myself over things that I couldn't change. So it's a very important thing when a person is just learning how to do builds in this sort of voxel environment. just roll with it, have some fun, be willing to change things, don't expect things to be perfect, and whatever you end up with, there's going to be a learning experience in the whole thing, at least one learning experience that carries forward to the next build, and they just kind of evolve over time. In terms of overall design and the way this build is coming together, this is already by far my favorite small vessel that I've ever put together. This being the person who's already seen what the end result looks like for this section of the ship, or at least what the final major build looks like. And whatever little changes take place between now and the finished version aren't going to be the kind that define the build. The build is already defined, and it's just waiting for you guys to see it. So now we've got half of this thing done, except for the bottom two layers, and it's looking like the shape that I wanted it to look like, which is always gratifying. There's a certain relief that comes from getting to this point and looking at it and saying, yes, there's definitely going to be some changes between now and the end, but we're definitely on the right track. We're headed in the right direction. Things are coming together as well as we could have hoped for them to do. And it's just now a matter of, sticking through to the end, finishing it off, and then keeping an eye on it. And every once in a while we look at it, and from those little glances, there's a chance that an idea might pop in mind on how we could refine something or improve something or change something in a way that yields to an even better result. By the time this front nose section is done, there won't be much left to do on the rest of the ship. We will have some work left to do on the very back of the ship, where we left things just as the rough profiles, because I hadn't actually come up with any fleshed out ideas for what I wanted to do with them specifically yet. We have the underside of the ship to take care of. It hasn't all been filled in. And of course we have the interior that we have to take care of. But being that this is a small vessel and not something like, say, the Saturnus, it's not going to take that long to get all of those things buttoned down and finished off to our satisfaction. So we've saved a lot of time on this build by being really thorough with the profiling, getting everything laid out so we have that persistent visual aid. And now it's to the point where we can start thinking about things like, where do we want the thrusters, because we can put them pretty much anywhere we want, and all we have to do is cut out a section of the hull to do it. It's not going to be a difficult thing to make that happen. I have decided that we'll be using the small model thrusters for the lateral thrusters as well as the lift and descent thrusters. So another way of saying, all of the remainder of the thrusters will be using the small model, and it's mainly for space reasons. I would love to use the big jet thrusters, but there are two things about that. One, they're very large, and two, if you can't really see them, it really defeats the purpose, I find. We don't need to save fuel so badly that I want to start making room for all of these massive thrusters inside the hull at the expense of the rest of the interior and how it looks, and also how it functions when you're trying to walk around inside. So we'll be using the small model thrusters to take care of the rest of our propulsion needs, and then we'll have plenty of room on the interior to get things laid out in a way that we're happy with. And then we have to mount weapons, which on a small vessel basically means static barrels on the front somewhere. Wherever we're going to put them, that's what's going to happen, static barrels on the front. I came up with an idea that I want to try, I probably will try, for having an entrance to the ship closer to the front, but semi-concealed. And it would be really difficult for me to describe what I have in mind, so I think what we'll do is I'll just see about implementing it and then show you guys and then describe the thought process as I do. For now, you can see we're in good shape. We've got this side of the front section done. All we have to do is duplicate it on the other side and then refine it over time. Very, very happy with the way things are going, even if they aren't absolutely perfect just yet. So the next episode, we're going to carry on. We're going to continue doing some refining, some finished work on the exterior. We're probably going to take a look a little bit at the interior, possibly. I don't expect that we'll be getting too far with it, but we'll at least kind of be poking around. So if you want to be notified about the next and future episodes, The easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information box below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.